aceste Miestra Schiva qui parla duce dels democrats en liberești de Talossa, et eu sunt aici per reisne cyn fy ben amic is cyn se tagien Braneu over la monarchar Talossan.
Azul.
Azul.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for setting up this debate, offering to start this. I'm not sure if we should call it a debate. I think you're just talking about it. We are discussing
Discussion.
Yes, it's
friendly chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all right, then I think maybe you should start.
I should let people know we agreed that we would each start with a 3-minute presentation of our ideas. So that's fine. I'll start with mine, and Braneu here will reply. Okay. Well, this election is very different from the last one. The Talossan monarchy hasn't been a live issue for the last 6 months in power in Talossan history because the king hasn't been a live issue. He hasn't vetoed any bills or made any unpleasant public statement. Part of that would be that he doesn't have to because the party that's more friendly to him is in power at the moment. Now, for quite a few Talossans, that's the way they like it. They prefer something like the British monarchy, being seen but not heard. Others, on the other hand, might ask, shouldn't the King of Talossa, the fount of all honour, as the saying goes, shouldn't be active in the cultural and social life of Talossa? Now, these questions, as I say, have gone dormant to a large degree because the king hasn't drawn attention to himself recently. But what is worrying me and is worrying the Free Democrats, of which I'm the party leader at the moment, is that will change if the Talossa National Congress get the votes in the next ZIU to change the rules of succession. Now, the status quo is neutral to all points of view in Talossa. What will happen at the moment is if the king, God forbid, should leave us for whatever reason, then the uppermost court will take on the regency until such time as Talossans decide through the regular process of organic law amendments to replace him. That's 2/3 majority in the Cosa, majority in the Senate, and a referendum. Now, there might be arguments that we should have an heir to the throne in advance, so that you wouldn't have that regency. And yes, that you can do that, but you can do that without changing the rules at all. The king can submit bills to the ZIU on any purpose. So if he wanted to, in the first clerk of the next Cosa, the king could suddenly say, I nominate so-and-so as my successor. And as an organic law reform, that would need 2/3 majority of the Cosa, majority of the Senate, and then approved in the referendum. And I don't see why we need to change that. The only answer I can find is that the king wants to put up a successor which he knows couldn't get that 2/3 majority, couldn't get that cross-party political support. And all signs indicate that the preferred successor is the person who the king named regent when he went away, somebody who is pretty poisonous to the opposition point of view in Talossa at the moment. I think both major parties agree that the monarchy should be non-partisan. And I think that the current system where the king can declare a successor with the proper organic law majorities, that's the best way to go about it. The only way that's going to change is, again, that 2/3 majority in the Cosa. So any suggestions that the incoming government are going to have to make, they're going to have the support of other faction of Talossan opinion. So it's going to have to be a process of compromise, and it's going to have to be something that my side of politics is going to prefer to the status quo. We need an incentive to change our minds on this. Thank you, Braneu. Would you like to respond
Thank
to
you.
that?
Yes, I have a statement too. I will read it now. For years, politicians in the Kingdom of Talossa have debated the monarchy. In their efforts, they may have inadvertently created a hostile political environment. I don't think this is 2 or 3 people's fault, but something rather larger than that. Because looking at everything through the lens of politics, and I know this is very important, the monarchy, but that limits us and causes some kind of tunnel vision. It saddens me that people can no longer work together because of this issue. And in the quest for the ultimate solution that will make everyone happy when discussing the monarchy, we have forgotten that we are human being with a lot of other interests and capable of achieving things on a global scale. I see that the kingdom that way, as a global kingdom, because isn't the kingdom of Talossa a global event of which we are a part of? Don't you look at it that way? For some, Talossa is an online platform where they have a history, they have connection, friends, and unresolved wounds too, I believe. And I have witnessed people emerging from the shadows to launch vituperations at each other, and it saddens me. And they launched these vituperations against their fellow Talossans for not sharing this same perspective on the monarchy issue, and that's because it has been a degrading relation. The monarchy is an issue that has fractured the political landscape of the Kingdom of Talossa, and I look at it as an unsolved mathematical problem that has left the door open to all political machinations we can see in larger nations, and which I seek to escape from. It saddens me to find myself back in this environment, as if it were part of the human nature to resort to low blows to achieve our goals or anybody's goals, and to establish our opinions as law. That's what I'm most concerned about. Our platform is about involving the population, letting them know that we're open to dialogue, placing impartial individuals with this conflict resolution system. They may be citizens from out of Talossa. We're yet to decide. We need to decide together. But I will encounter difficult situations along the way. I have been encountered some difficult situations along the way. People who, in defense of the political sides, they start to work in the shadows to do or to block stuff from happening. And I think that's all way out of the way to actually solve things and to establish a diplomatic good relation with other fellow Talossans. This is why I approach this discussion, the monarchy issue, with this team Miestra Schiva, not to impose our opinions on others, but to approach the issue from a new perspective, I think, the perspective of traceability of viewpoints, a platform for moderated dialogue focused on solutions. It doesn't matter the size of the solution, or we want to work on actually have things established together as a nation, as a kingdom. So if people want to repeat the cycle due to past wounds or whatever, I totally understand. But if you want to rekindle the spark of reaching an agreement with people who are ready to start an agreement, a dialogue, well, then I invite you to have a dialogue with me, with us, with your fellow Talossans.
Oh, those are very, very kind and well thought out thoughts. You're absolutely right that this has been, there's been a butting of heads on this issue for too long. We've got very strong personalities on both sides of the situation. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's historic wounds, there's low blows on both sides. There's a lack of trust. And part of the problem that we see ourselves is that the king himself, even though he's been, as I say, he's been laying very low recently, the king has contributed to that lack of trust, in that when my side of politics were in power, he was stubborn, he was obstructionist, and as you know, the point where he named somebody who he knew was going to absolutely infuriate us as a regent. He just lost so much trust in future. And this is why we are very allergic to the idea of him being able to name his own successor without it being approved by us. But I suppose I have to, like, from what you're saying, when you're talking about the monarchy, it sounds like you're talking a little bit more about the topic of succession. From what I saw in the TNC platform, succession seems to be mainly what you're interested in, but is it possible that you're also interested in a broader question of what the monarchy does in Talossa, what its powers are? Because that would be very interesting to our side of politics if things other than the succession were up for debate. Now, is that true? Is that going to happen?
Yes, the monarchy, I think, is a rather broad issue, and I actually have a question for you, because not just for you, I mean for all of Talossans, because I think I've seen different expectations of the monarchy, of the king, and I know that the king has been not the most active citizen, and well, there's a lot of citizens that hasn't been active at all, except for elections. But how do you picture the perfect king for Talossa?
Well, me personally, I'm the wrong person to ask that question because I'm a Republican. But I'm here on behalf of the Free Democrats, and the Free Democrats are a broad church. We've got some of us are Republicans. Some of us would prefer changes to how the monarchy works. Some of us are fine with how the current monarchy works. It's just that we think the current king has been unaccountable. Well, I mean, what we've had historically is not so much that the king was inactive, but that the king was inactive culturally. This is a question of historic context, because I'm old enough to remember the founder of Talossa, King Robert I, and he was a tyrant and a bully, and we got rid of him for good question, but he was the cultural motor behind Talossa. He kept everything going culturally. He invented the language. He invented this whole mythology of Talossa. So he did all that, as well as his very, very negative political views. So after he left, the current king, the current King John, I mean, he basically was voted king by the kingdom, by the Zeu at the time, just basically because they needed the king and they didn't have anybody. John Woolley didn't start Talossa. John Woolley, he's been more active culturally in the past, but he hasn't been that central figure. So I think for those of us who do want a king, we would imagine a king who would be culturally active, and who would be a uniting figure, who would unite all segments of Talossan opinion, as opposed to the current king who's really gone out of his way to alienate one side of politics. Probably also a king who would be active in promoting Talossa to other people, to people outside Talossa. Now, if you look at other micronations who are getting a lot of good publicity at the moment, they have in common that their monarch is out there promoting them. Like, the king of Molossia, for example, he's a fanatical self-promoter, but it works. So, speaking for my party rather than for myself personally, we would want a king who is more active culturally and in promoting Talossan patriotism, but was also trusted politically. I mean, you don't necessarily need to take all his political powers away from him, but you need to know that he's not going to veto bills without warning. He's not going to favor very controversial people from one side of politics and just give the brush off to the other. you really, really do need a king who's non-partisan and above all, non-partisan and seen to be non-partisan. You can't just say I'm non-partisan. You have to act like it, and you have to build trust in that sense. And that's where the current incumbent has fallen down, I believe.
Do you think that maybe, okay, you mentioned that the not being a partisan figure. Do you picture, not mentioning any names, but do you picture a Talossan citizen that may be able to be agreed in a succession?
Well, I don't know. I actually do think that a very good suggestion was put up for a Talossan king a while back. The problem is that I don't think the person involved wants to do it. A couple of years, a couple of years ago, there was a party running in the election for former Seneschal Luc de Sheer to be to be king of Talossa, and I think he would be a great option, but I think he's told me that he doesn't actually want to do it. So there's a problem that I think the people who most want to do it are kind of the people who shouldn't be allowed to do it, because ambition is a problem. If you can't find somebody who's non-partisan, then you have to take political power out of their hands, because they can't be trusted to use it, or alternatively, you've just got a monarchy which openly favors one side of politics, and it's all like, I can do what I want, try and stop me. That's either just gonna cause people to leave, or it's going to cause people to lose their interest.
You mentioned something about try and stop me attitude.
Yeah.
Do you think you can give me like an example of a time this has happened?
Well, I just have to go back to it in the beginning. The person who the king named as regent when he was absent in I can't remember, it was the 56th or the 57th Cosa, a couple of Cosas ago, he named Alexandru Darvanescu as regent, knowing perfectly well that would absolutely infuriate our side of politics. And
I'm not promoting anyone to be the king. I think we have a king, and I think it's the best king for the current the current citizens that we have in Talossa, that are like 130 something citizens. I don't know if you could vote someone to be more agreed upon, but what I would say is that event that you mentioned, that was a few Cosas ago, before my arrival in the kingdom.
Yes.
I started to lurk around the Wittenberg, and I finally got back enough to read all those threads and see the appointment and everything. But I was surprised that at the very end, the time he gave the crown back, so to speak, you actually kind of congratulate him on being actually because he did what he had to do, and it wasn't a bad time for, like, if he had that power, he didn't abuse it. I mean, I have to say again, I'm not promoting anyone to be the king, but it wasn't that bad that particular time, right?
You're right. He behaved himself. He behaved himself. But the thing is, I think
you're more angry that because the king, you assume that the king chose that person because that would anger you or your party.
No, the king said why he did it. The king said it is because he was the greatest defender of the monarchy. But you see how that becomes this kind of vicious cycle. The king gives authority and he gives honors to people who promote the monarchy, and therefore they promote the monarchy. You see, it's kind of a self-producing cycle that if you get close to the king, he's going to shower you with honors.
I was talking with Serge Sarnenogat, the TNC party leader, and we were trying to dissect, with that the word we use, dissect the monarchy. And yes, you have the monarch powers and the monarch succession and the monarch responsibility, the duties. And that's a very broad issue. I mean, you cannot finish talking about the monarchy even if you keep talking for days. And I think that maybe we can agree as a nation to talk about specific issues, one cosa at a time. And
so would the idea be that this cosa would be the one that talks about the succession?
It's the trial. If you present yourself as a person who is willing to start a dialogue, to let people decide, not to represent a set of values that they're imposed on you because the party you represent, but someone else who is willing to talk and start dialogue and to agree and to talk about my concerns and to listen to other people's concerns. I think I know your concern about the king appointing a successor. I know, I perfectly understand your concern, and I want to hear more people's concerns about the succession issue, and to maybe we can like talk about what are the people's main concerns and how they oppose other people's concerns. So maybe like try to figure out together a way to do a succession and finally a compromise. So that's our platform. I know.
But but I would ask you, what is wrong with the current system? What is wrong with John turning up to the first clerk of the next COSA and saying, I nominate so-and-so as my successor, and it goes through with the normal all-law amendment proposal, 2/3 COSA, majority Senate, and a referendum? Why do we need to change the procedure?
The status quo that you mentioned was that this is something that hasn't happened before. The king hasn't made such a nomination, and he's expected, I know you may think he's failing at, but he's expected anyway to be partisan, to not be partisan, and to nominate someone from the kingdom to be the next king. You mentioned someone who may be a good nominee, but I don't know if the king has, that's the problem actually. I don't know if the king has been lurking around, seeing everything that's happening.
You haven't actually talked to him?
I haven't actually, I never have reached out to him, really.
Right.
And I haven't tried to reach out to him, but I don't know why I haven't reached out to him. But I haven't found the need to reach out to him, because what I see that's happening, it's what I take an interest in. And that's what I try to do stuff, because we need stuff happening, I think. And the cultural, I know, not only you, but a lot of like the political agreement is that the culture has to come from the people, not the government. And I agree with that. But I think that my real life work and my dreams are related to culture. What if the culture we expected to emanate from the king can come from the people? And that's another part of what I've been talking with Serge Sarnenogat. To answer the question, why do you think it needs to be changed, the system? I'm not even sure if it needs to be changed. There's this debate going on since forever, apparently, about the monarchy issue, that's the way I read it. That's the way it's in my mind. The monarchy issue. What are the issues? The succession, the power, the veto, the everything. No, so that's what I want to talk about. And I was reading and talk about this with my party colleagues, and I asked, what will happen if the king stops being available, like you said, no? And they said this: you have the court as a regent and as a regency court, and we can be without a king for years.
That's happened before. That's happened before.
That's what I think, that maybe we should establish some kind of program. It may not work, it may not, but I think that at least we should talk about it. And that's, and I think this talk is like what I would like to for it to happen more often, and not like let's gather all politicians and talk together. No, like what we are, citizens. And that's what we're trying to achieve. Both, yes.
The nature of Talossa, unfortunately, is that virtually all citizens who are active are politically aligned one way or another. So, unfortunate. This is a problem. I mean, this is one of the problems why, when I was Seneschal, I was very interested in setting up the civil service and a lot of ways for people to be involved in Talossa without having to join a political party. But as we see, virtually everybody who is involved in Talossa is associated with one political party or another. So, I mean, you're right. It does need to be a citizens-based, bottom-up discussion. That's what we need. But it's well, the monarchy is a political issue, so politics are going to come into it. And you're right that it doesn't necessarily need to be a partisan issue. I mean, I have been very impressed by the way that you've campaigned in a way which hasn't been partisan, that you have been reaching out to thoughts outside the TNC. But unfortunately, on a personal level, as you well know, there are grudges being held, there are long memories, there is a huge lack of trust in Talossa. And perhaps one of the problems is with new citizens come in and they don't understand why there is a lack of trust. For trust to be built, I think the kind of dialogue you need requires trust to be built. And trust can't be built without a kind of a truth and reconciliation.
Yes.
That's what I said when I turned down the medal that I was offered. I just felt I couldn't accept it, because to accept it would be pretending that everything was okay when the people offering me the medal have been calling me every name under the sun for decades, and a matter of being, and I wasn't going to pretend that everything was okay. You're able to build a dialogue which actually builds trust and gets through those that lack of trust issue, which I'm sure is as much on your side as it is on our side. Wonderful. I don't know how you can do it. I hope you can. I look forward to seeing it.
It's time for us to start a big bottom-up dialogue, like you said. And I think this is a good example of what we can achieve, this talk. I want to finish this session, this talk-friendly, casual talk, stating that I have a lot of respect for Miestra Schiva, and I don't call her Dame Miestra because she says she doesn't like the chivalry honor, and I assume this is because she's has this punk rock attitude, so to speak, which is a reminder that we each bring our unique perspectives to Talossa, and that's something I truly appreciate. And we, as Talossans, are bound together by our love for the kingdom, and we'll have something to offer, even if it's just opinions or votes. So please don't let this down. Don't let me down. Let's continue our path to a better, stronger, kinder kingdom of Talossa through intellectual stimulation, kind engagement, and a lot of joy.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Braneu. I've enjoyed it too, and you have acted with good faith and honesty, and I do look forward to continuing this conversation. It's sad that right now at the moment, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and of course, as a dandelion, she would be able to join Talossa in 7 years. But as Talossa stands now, I wouldn't introduce her to it because it's not fun for me. I stay in Talossa because I feel like I'm fighting the good fight at the moment, and it's hard and it's painful and it's not fun. And I would love Talossa to be fun again. I would love not feeling like every election is might like absolutely ruin it forever by putting who I see as very unpleasant people in charge forever. So all I can say is that I would encourage everybody who wants to make sure that the future of the Talossan monarchy really is non-partisan to vote for the Free Democrats and the Cosa, just so the other party is not able to just say, try and stop us. But I truly, truly hope that the TNC nominee for Seneschal is able to get together this dialogue that he's talking about, and hopefully he can rebuild the trust we need to be a nation I would bring my daughter into. Thank you.
Thank you very much.